Good morning and praise Jesus. Today we are proceeding with our reflections. We are reflecting in the person of Jabez. Now in the Old Testament, in the book of 1 Chronicles chapter 4, the Bible has highlighted the story of Jabez. And as we always say in the reflection, is that God in his own wisdom decided to use specific people and history events to communicate to us. I tend to believe there are so many other things that happened in the days of the Bible, in the olden days. But now God chose specific people, instances to communicate to us. And therefore today we want to reflect on the communications of God through the life of Jabez. Now in 1 Chronicles chapter 4, it began by giving us the descendants of Judah. And then in 2 verses or 3 verses, which is 1 Chronicles chapter 4, verse 9 to 11, it highlights the person of Jabez. Maybe I can just read because it's a brief passage, and then we reflect on the person of Jabez and learn from him the lessons that God wants us to learn from the story of Jabez. 1 Chronicles 4, 9 to 12. Jabez was more honorable than his brothers. His mother named him Jabez, cried, saying, I have gave birth to him in pain. Jabez cried out to the God of Israel, oh, that you would bless me and enlarge my territory. Let your hand be with me and keep me from harm so that I'll be free from pain. And God granted his request. Now, the story of Jabez makes us to understand that his pain, his problems, they began at birth. You know, in life, there are some things you can do, say when you're of age, that can land you into problems. There are some bad decisions you can make, you as a person, that can cost your life. But now the story of Jabez tells us that even before he was born, his troubles had already begun. His mother gave birth to him in pain. And so even Jabez, before he was born, he began bringing problems. He was a pain to the mother. And even you see that it happens, complicated pregnancy, ectopic pregnancy, and then you have a child. The child becomes so problematic, he ends up becoming very sickly and all that. And so at birth, his pain is started. So you could not say that the pain of Jabez was because he had done something wrong. You could not say the pain of Jabez was because at some point a friend did this or this to him. It was just at birth his pain began. And also we can add the fact that he took time to identify where the problem really began. You know, sometimes it could, when you have observed a pattern in your life, you need to take time and reflect the cause of this pattern, especially negative pattern. What can be the root cause? What can be the root cause of what can be the root cause of this pain, of these problems, of this failure? It cannot be you're always sickly. It cannot be nothing is working out for your favor. It cannot be all of you in your family, you're educated, you are schooled, but no jobs. It cannot be that there is no functional family in your family. It cannot be that there is no relationship that you can sustain. It is not coincidental that there are patterns of delay. You see, something that you need to do at 20, you have to do at 40. Something that you need to do at 40, you have to do at 60. There has to be a cost. And so we can speculate because the word of God has not made us to understand how did then Jabez get to know that the problem was the mother gave him a certain name, which was a curse. And so it could be God revealed to him by the Spirit. It could be he asked around the uncles, he asked the brothers, he asked those to whom they know about his family, just to try and explain to him, what can be the problem with my family? What can be the problem with me? How come I have pain? Because you are told that Jabez, he cried to God, meaning he was of age, meaning he had reached at that point where he could fellowship with God. And so he took time to soul search, to try and get the right diagnosis. You know, when you go to hospital, if you are sick and then you have symptoms, you know, there are some diseases which have similar symptoms. They normally say it should be TB and malaria. They almost have similar symptoms, you know, and many other diseases. But now the doctors, they'll take their time. They will do some lab tests, you know, until now they can do proper diagnosis. Now, once they have done proper diagnosis, they can do the right prescription. But now, if you are misdiagnosed, you can be given the wrong medication, which in a sense, again, they can cost you. And so the first successful thing for you to do, get the right diagnosis, then you shall get the right prescription. And therefore, Jabez had to take time, first of all, to identify, to troubleshoot with precision. And then he came to conclusion that now I know where my problem is. My problem is my parents. My problem is my mother. The problem is the name I was given in itself is a curse. We understand Proverbs 18 has told us life and death is in the power of the tongue. Those who love it, they eat their fruits. And so names can be a curse. And so the name Jabez, he came to discover it means pain. So meaning, anytime the mother was calling Jabez, he was invoking pain. Every time other people are calling Jabez, they were invoking pain, because that is what that name meant. And the mother did so intentionally, because the pregnancy was very complicated. She gave birth to him in pain, and she cursed him. And even we see that in society, for women, for example, if you get pregnant and you are not expecting it, sometimes you might end up speaking cursing words on that child. You give birth to a child that you have not prepared. Maybe you are in school, and then you start hating that child. And most of the time, children who are born under such conditions, if you observe them, you can take note of some negative patterns, because it normally affects them. And so the story of Jabez teaches us the place of parental blessing is very important. The place of the right words that we use to our children. When God has given you children, your role as a father, as a mother, is to bless them, even if they are troublesome, is to bless them. Don't be tempted to curse them every time, because the more you curse them, that is who they will become. And also the more you bless them, that is what they shall become. And therefore, don't use your mouth to curse your children. Use your mouth to bless your children, because that is what God shall confirm. If you use your mouth to curse them, that is what the devil shall confirm. And so he took time, soul searched, came to a conclusion that now I know I have diagnosed the problem. So now what needs to be done? Because it's one thing to know this is where the problem is. It's another thing to know, how can I solve this problem? Where is the way out to this problem? Now that I know my problem started when I was born, the time I was born, that is when my problem started. It is not because I did something wrong. It is not because I have not gone to school. It is not because I am not hardworking. It is not because I am not peaceful, that's why I am not getting married. There is a problem somewhere. And I have made, after thorough search, I have come to a conclusion. It started with my mother. It started with my parent. And therefore, how can I revoke it? And therefore, Jabez decided to use the tool of prayer. You know, most of the time we underestimate the place of prayer. We underestimate the power of prayer. And Jabez wanted to use the tool of prayer to change the trajectory of his life. Now, from the story of Jabez, from the prayer of Jabez, he mentioned 4 elements. And actually, the prayer of Jabez can give us an insight to understand what are some of the things that were troubling Jabez. Because from the prayer, it talks about, oh God, that you would bless me. Because then it could mean he realized there were no blessing. Because if you're asking God for blessing, it means you don't have it. And so you observed his life and he discovered, I don't seem to be blessed. Things are not working. I am struggling. It is always pain. And therefore he went to God seeking the blessing. And also he realized there was no growth. So he sought for enlargement, because he prayed, oh, that you may bless me and enlarge me. And so again, he observed his life and he discovered he is stunted. He discovered his territory. There is no growth in his territory, and then he realized there's a problem, and I need to seek a solution. How can I be enlarged? And also he realized that the hand of God was not with him, because in his prayer he said that your hand may be with me. For you to tell God that, that your hand may be with me, it could be by the prompting of the Spirit. You feel it appears the Lord is not with me. It appears I lack some favor with God. It appears the presence of God is not as real as it should be. And so he went to God to seek the hand of God for intervention. And also he faced pain, because he talked about so that no harm may come to me. So there was harm, there are a lot of things happening in his life that were causing harm. And that's why we have begun by saying, anytime you realize patterns of disadvantages happening in your life consistently, so they are never coincidental. There is nothing like bad luck in the kingdom. There is nothing like it just happened. There is always a root cause. If you take time to do diagnosis, you'll always find there's always a root cause. And so he discovered there was harm. And then lastly, he discovered there was pain, so that there is no pain in my life. And so he went to God. He realized there are no blessing, there was no enlargement, the hand of God was not upon him, there was harm in his life, and there was pain in his life. And so he identified all these areas, and he was so sure that these are the areas that I want God to intervene. These are the areas that I'm believing God for divine intervention. And so he went to God in prayer. We understand he cried to God. Now, we are told that God granted his request. And that's a very important thing. If you are in that condition like Jabez, you have identified this is the problem. You have taken time and observed there are patterns of delay in my life. You have taken time and observed, no matter how many papers you get, you are not getting jobs. You have tried your best. You have been as aggressive as you can, but no jobs are opening up. You have observed that you're always sickly. If you're not suffering from this sickness, you're always suffering from the next sickness. The same case to your husband. At any point in your family, someone is always on medication. There is no time that all of you are just healthy. You have taken time, and then you have observed this pattern, all these patterns. And so what next? Now that you know there's a problem, what next? Jabez decided to use the tool of prayer. Sometimes you can detect there's a problem, and you choose to use the wrong means. We know of some people, they know they have discovered where the problem is. They go to witch doctors. They discovered where the problem is. They don't trust God. They use other dark means, sacrifice and Illuminati and all that. So they know there's a problem. But now the person who has created the problem is the devil again. Is convincing them, if you want to sort this problem, go to a witch doctor. If you want to sort this problem, join this secret society. If you want to sort this problem, so you have discovered there's a problem, but you're using the wrong means to solve it. And so Jabez used the weapon of prayer. And so prayer is a very powerful tool that all of us can use to change our destiny. Those patterns that you have observed, patterns of financial struggles, you're always struggling, patterns of distress. You've been to the city 10 years, nothing is happening, 15 years, yet some people are coming 5 years, they are breaking forth. You have observed the patterns. Engage the power of prayer. Don't underestimate the power of prayer. Jabez cried to the Lord. This Bible, this portion makes it very simple. It does not tell us the prayer was very complicated, because it has been cited. If you are to read this prayer, you will not take more than a minute. It came from the heart. And so Jabez was telling God that, God, I've realized the problem, but I can revoke this thing. Whatever my mother did, you can revoke it. She put a curse on me, you can do a blessing. She programmed pain, you can program blessing. And so Jabez went to God. And he made that prayer, and we are told God granted the request. And so my prayer for us as we finish in reflecting the life of Jabez, choose the weapon of prayer to change the patterns, the negative patterns, the story in your family, the negative patterns in your children. Choose the weapon of prayer. Prayer is a very powerful tool. And because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, he will do the same. The Lord who granted the request then shall grant the request now. Once you've taken some time, you have noticed the pattern, engage the place of prayer. Engage the weapon of prayer. And God shall hear your prayer, and God shall answer your prayer. And that's our reflection in the life of Jabez. I believe if you're in that season or in that space of Jabez, you have been challenged, and you shall engage the place of prayer, and you shall overturn those limitations. And I want to guarantee you that as you do so by faith in God, God has committed, he shall grant you that request. And that's our reflection. If it has been a blessing to you, you can just write to us. Also you can share and also subscribe. See you next as we reflect in the person of Hagar. You are blessed.